Today we are talking about one of my favorite hi-fi companies out there. One that is on the rise, I think. Advanced Paris. This is the Advanced Paris XP700. It is a $2,000 preamp. So, if you're not interested in a $2,000 preamp, this probably isn't the video for you. However, it's pretty cool, so you should stick around. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Advanced Paris XP700 preamp and a power amp.
Black, wife too. Don't turn this into no controversy. It's my boo. I can make $250,000 off a haiku, and I can make another quarter off at times two. If it's money on the table.
$2,000 for a preamp. That's expensive, right? Yes, but there are a ton of options, a ton of different and interesting design choices here. If you look at it aesthetically, it is the typical Advanced Paris styling. The XP700 basically looks like the integrated amplifier that I just reviewed. I can't remember that name. I think it's the i75. You have the glass front. It's not real glass. I think plexi or something like that, but it's a real thick, beautiful front. Very clean. You have one power button on the left, and then you have a multi-function volume knob smack dab in the middle. That's it. But when you pair the XP700 with one of their amplifiers, especially one that has the VU meters, although I think all their amplifiers have VU meters. Anyway, when you pair it with one of those, you have a beautiful, wonderful, attractive stack. And the XP700 has been in my living room for the better part of 3 weeks at this point, because it's a gorgeous combo. On the back, there is a lot going on. All the way on the left, on the top, you have a Bluetooth module. Now, I kind of think that Bluetooth should have been included in this at $19.99. However, I do understand why it's not, because who is going to be using Bluetooth on a $2,000 preamp? I know I'm not. I'm not using Bluetooth on a $300 preamp. So let's just go underneath. You have a phono stage, both moving magnet and moving coil. Not only that, but you have two settings for the moving coil. You have moving coil low, moving coil high. There are also different loading options for the phono preamp section. Next to that, on the bottom, you have 7 different analog inputs and a record out. Above that, you have your DAC input, coaxial in, one coaxial, two optical ins, one traditional cable printer style USB input, two trigger outputs, a USB-A input, then you have an update and a normal switch, which I assume you use a USB thumb drive to update it. Next to that, a very interesting choice. On the front, there are two headphone jacks. One's a 3.5 millimeter, one's a 6.35 millimeter, or 6.33. Anyway, the big one and the little one. Both single-ended though. Two settings for each output, or input, however you want to say it. Two settings for the headphone output. Gain settings, and then you have impedance settings. I'll get to this later, but I find this a very interesting choice on this preamplifier. Next to that, you have a single XLR input. To the right of that, two subwoofer outputs. You also have a high-pass preamp output and a regular preamp output. Next to that, you have balanced XLR outputs. And this is truly balanced, because if you take a peek under the hood, you will see that there are two toroidal transformers, one for each channel. This is very similar, if we're looking at this, Very similar design to the A12 Classic, I believe. I believe there's 2 toroidal power supplies, one for each channel. And that integrated amplifier comes in at $3,700. So even when you combine the price of the XP700 with something like XA160, you have a package that's coming in at $300 more than the A12 Classic. But the A12 Classic has some different options, different features that some people might be interested in. Using this is pretty straightforward. You have one multifunction knob in the middle, which is also the volume knob. To get into the menu, you just literally push it. The first option is going to be, well, what input you want to listen to. Then options from there include tone controls, automatic power down, there's a loudness, a balance. You can put this thing in pure Class A, or I guess not Class A. A bypass, which means you are bypassing the tone controls. And then the last option, I wasn't really sure about because it's not in the manual. It's TRI, and it does impact the sound. Basically, you have tone controls, loudness, Class A, and then that TRI option. So you have 5 different ways that you can affect the sound coming out of this preamplifier. Some people probably aren't going to love the multifunction knob, but after I used it a couple of times, and I'm used to using the A10 Classic because I own it, but after you use it for a while, it's pretty simple because you don't have to like double click anything. You click, then you dial in whatever the option you want, on, off, or treble up or treble down, and then you just leave it. And then after 1 second, it just puts it into that mode. Oh boy, big question here, how it sounds. Well, it sounds very different in the different modes. It sounds brilliantly clean, and it makes sense because I didn't even realize it had 2 toroidal power transformers. I knew it was differential or balanced, like truly balanced. But when I was looking up pictures for this video, God, mosquitoes still. I wish they would go away. But I sit out on the back porch with my dogs enjoying a nice cup of coffee sometimes, and I still get eaten up with the mosquitoes. I treat the yard, but like 2 days later, the mosquitoes are back. And there's not like I have standing water. I don't have rancid standing water in my backyard. Did you know the most dangerous animal on earth is the mosquito? Interesting. Do you know cows kill more people each year than sharks do? Very interesting. I think hippopotamuses kill a lot of people too. I digress. What were we talking about? Oh, how it sounds. It sounds, well, great in all the modes, but you can really dial this into, well, the music that you're listening to and how you want to listen to it. Class A, just as you would think, it's rich. It's a little bit warm. Not as exacting. So the biggest differences in the sound I found from the Class A to the non-Class A. Fairly analytical, very clean to a little bit more laid back, but tonally I think more accurate, richer. I enjoy the Class A mode better than the non-Class A mode. Interesting thing is on the Evo 160 power amp, it also has a Class A high bias, and that is the mode that I had the amplifier in. So if you start to combine these advanced Paris products, you can start layering Class A on Class A. The last option, I want to say TRI, but I could be wrong. When I actually edit this video, I'll know if I'm right or wrong. That one is really hard to explain because there definitely was a difference. But once you have all these different options going on at the same time, so let's say you have loudness control, you have the Class A bias on, and then you're switching in and out on the TRI modes, you get a lot of variability in the sound. The great thing is they all sound good. They all sound very different though, so depending upon what mood you're in, you can, well, change up the settings. Even with the internal DAC. And when we're talking about the internal DAC, it's a Burr Brown 17 something 96 or something like that, which is a good DAC. It's a great DAC. It's actually a very tonally accurate DAC. That's going to kind of be a reoccurring theme with this preamplifier. It's tonally pleasing. It doesn't seem like it's harsh at all, and it doesn't seem like it's too laid back even in Class A mode. I think the timbre of instruments and voices with this combination is next level. And the space. I had the Amphion speakers hooked up to this, which I believe have an aluminum dome tweeter. And the depth layering clarity, even with the internal DAC, was very addicting, super yummy. No kind of smearing of one instrument into the other. Now, granted, we're talking about a $4,000 setup just for the electronics. The point I'm trying to make is I don't think you need to run out and buy an external DAC. The phono stage, too, was legit on par with my Project. $2. What is this? $2 S2. You'd think I'd have this memorized by now. And this is, well, it's got tubes in it. Another interesting thing about this preamplifier is a lot of times on a lot of products from Advanced Paris, they have tube buffers in them. This does not, but it definitely has some tube vibes. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think some people aren't going to like some of the lack of features and some of the inclusion of other features. The headphone options are a bit of a head scratcher for me. I get having a headphone connection in a preamp or a power amp, integrated amp, whatever you want to call it. Integrated amp, probably not a power amp. I get having one in there, but I don't get the option of having two different single-ended options with two different loading options, gain settings, and things like that. For me, I just wish they had one, a 6.35. I guess if you want to have two people listening at the same time, I could see that. I don't know how many people would be in that use case scenario. I love the fact that it has high-pass filtering as well, which is selectable. I think I forgot to mention that. I do wish there was an HDMI ARC connection. That may facilitate having to add a processor or add a different DAC chip. So I can see people saying, well, I get the HDMI on the A10 and the A12. Why am I not getting it on the P700? I get it because I was having to use my Weem Ultra for TV duty. Also using it for streaming duty too. I just wish it had HDMI ARC. As it is though, you have truly balanced architecture, ton of options on the phono preamp, beautiful design, a bunch of different options that affect the sonics. It's a wonderful product. I do wish they had a step down version that didn't have the headphone options, had HDMI ARC, and maybe was just single-ended out. But I think it's a great product. And if you're considering something like the X160 Evo, this would be the perfect addition to it. Has a few features I'm not looking for, doesn't have a feature that I am looking for, but pretty much is a very analog 2-channel purist preamplifier. So what do you think? Put it in the comments. Is there stuff out there that at a lower price that you think is better? Is there stuff out there at the same price that you think is better? Put it in the comments. If you want to become part of the best hi-fi community on the planet Earth, I don't know about Venus or Mars, but on planet Earth, the best hi-fi community is my Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Check it out. We do Zooms, we have Discord, we do giveaways, we have a Facebook group, all sorts of stuff. Also, check out the links in the description. Most of those are affiliate links, which means if you click any buy, I get a commission. Doesn't cost you any more though, so it's a great way to support the channel. If you like this video on the XP700, then check out the video on the X160 Evo, the power amp that goes perfect with this preamp. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe.